You're watching WHPS, Highland Park, Detroit.
FM 88.1 WHPR, Highland Park.
WVIE 107.3 FM Charlotte, Amalia, Virgin Islands.
The views and opinions expressed on the following show are not necessarily the views and opinions of WHPS, its affiliates, management, or sponsors.
What's happening, Detroit? You know what time it is. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream, straight talk with Valerie. But before we get into tonight's content, I want to pay my condolences to a couple of dear friends of mine. We all know about Kobe Bryant and his daughter, and God bless him and his family. But I've had some very close friends, one pass away and one son that passed away. So I would first like to pay homage to my dear friend Gladys Hendricks, Peppy. She was just a wonderful, wonderful person. Her smile and her style, infectious. I grew up hanging out with her, and my dear friend and neighbor Valerie Roots is how I met Peppy. And I was the youngest of the bunch because they had me by a few years, but I definitely learned a lot from them. She is now with the Lord. I'm going to miss her. As I said, her smile and her style was infectious. She was just a lovely person, beautiful inside and out. May God's grace cover Chocolate and the rest of her family during their time of bereavement. The next person I would like to give my condolences to is my fellow executive board member of the Belleville Chamber, Carmen Stovall, and her husband, Gary. If you were watching the news, you might have seen where a driver was driving the wrong way on I-75 on Sunday. And it was a tragedy that took the life of a 26-year-old man. Well, it was my dear friend Carmen's son, Jeremy. So those of you that know the power of prayer, please pray with me as both of these families take the time to grieve the loss of their loved one, and pray for me as I take the time to grieve myself. Thank you so much, and we're on with the show. So tonight, I have a dear friend of mine in the studio with me who has a coined phrase: my success is mandatory, not optional, and it is my responsibility. We have Sheldon Hill with me. And say hello to everyone, Sheldon.
Hello, everyone. Sheldon Hill, President and CEO of Citywide Mentoring.
Yes, and Sheldon has some energy that I've never seen in my life, even from a 2-year-old toddler. When Sheldon sets his eye on the prize, he gets it done. And Sheldon gets more places than I can get on time. And he sometimes don't even have his car.
Yeah, he driving.
He not driving. Gets everywhere. If that's not motivation, I don't know what is. But we're going to talk about Sheldon's story through addiction and recovery in his journey where he's going now. So, Sheldon, no one wakes up one day and decides they want to become a drug dealer or they want to be a stick-up kid, right?
No.
Those decisions are made after a series of events that happens in one's life.
True.
Those adverse experiences that somebody is exposed to.
Or training.
Or training.
Yeah, there was a training.
So, how did you get involved with drugs?
Alcohol at the age of 8 years old. They used to give us beer cans to throw away and leave beer in the bottom of the beer cans. Even with sex for the first time at 8 years old.
Wow.
Paid for sex the first time 11 years old. 12 years old, my dad had been missing from my life. He came back into our life to help me get out of trouble in school. Went to hang out with him and his friends were drug dealers and pimps and whatnot. And he had sent me into a store to buy a pop. I didn't have any money. He gave me a $100 bill. He said, I don't want to ever hear you say you broke again. He said, later today we'll show you what we'll do about it. So we finished having lunch with his friends and go to his house. He sits a triple beam scale on the table. He goes and gets this black plastic bag with a whole bunch of marijuana and a whole bunch of weed in it. He pulls out a smaller bag and fills it up with a pound, gives me the pound of weed, hands me smaller bags to bag up the pounds of weed to smaller bags, and a .32 revolver. I'm 12 years old. My dad's a gang member, so this is him showing me love. He figures every man should have a hustle. It's necessary for every man to be able to feed himself and take care of himself, and that's what I did. That's where I got started. And it snowballed. It snowballed.
Wow. That sounds, and I can't wait till your movie comes out because I know it's coming out.
We're working on that.
But that sounds like something from a movie.
It actually is gang life.
Yeah.
My dad doesn't know who his father is.
So, and we actually are going to talk a little bit later about the absent father, but,
Yep.
Can you describe addiction with 3 words? If you had to describe addiction, what 3 words would you use?
Can't stop using. And that's whatever it is. Sex, drugs, gambling, speed, driving really fast in cars, violence. Can't stop using.
I agree with you, because people look at addiction mostly around drugs,
Yeah, sure.
substances. But I'll tell you, shopping is an addiction
Sure.
for me. And I was having a conversation with someone because they kept coming down so hard on a loved one about not being able to stop drinking. And this person loves sweets and Pepsi.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, that's like telling you, put this Pepsi down and never touch it again right now.
Thank
Like, do not eat another cupcake, another piece of sweet potato pie. Put that Pepsi down and don't touch it anymore. And watch those cravings and everything exacerbate and see what happens to you. So there are a lot of addictive substances, and sex is truly
Sure.
addictive.
Even you talk about the Pepsi and the cupcakes, the sugar. Mm-hmm. Anything that has sugar, that person, if they put the cupcakes and the Pepsi down, they're going to pick up Coca-Cola and something else, or salt. Mm-hmm. Years ago, Lay's potato chips, you can't eat just one. It's not the potato, it's not the chip, it's the salt on the chip. Mm-hmm. And you can't eat one Lay's, and it's a fact. Mm-hmm. It's a fact.
So let's talk a little bit about you using. So your father got you started 12 years old, gave you a pound of weed, show you how to bag it up, $100 and a revolver, and said,
Get money.
Basically, it was like a term of endearment, or him empowering you.
He was showing me love.
He was showing you love
See,
the way that he knew how.
My grandmother was a dancer. My father doesn't know.
dancer?
Was a stripper.
Oh, okay.
And so in her lifestyle, she dated out and she, sold herself off. So she didn't know who his father was. And so he was basically raised himself and in the streets. Well, in the streets where, you're in survival mode. And so with him leaving my mom with 4 kids, She got ill as a single parent. He wasn't there to help her with us, so I took over his role. And then,
Are you the oldest?
no, I'm not the oldest. I'm the oldest boy.
Okay.
So I've got a sister 3 years older than me, but I'm big brother.
Okay. Yeah, I
And
get
I
that.
took on at 14 years old. I had, by me selling the weed I was selling, and the guys that were in my neighborhood selling weed for me, I moved out of my mom's house at 14 years old. My girlfriend moved in with me at 15. I had my first son at 16. But I'm paying my mother's bills, I'm paying my bills, and I'm making babies. I'm grown now.
So you had your oldest child at 16.
16. He died 7 weeks later. He had SIDS, quick death.
Okay.
And my mom came home, found him dead in the crib, came out of the living room. I had moved into a house that we had at the back of ours. Instead of a garage, we had a house back there. And I hear my mom scream. I step out of the front door to see what's wrong with Mom's, and she's holding my son, saying the baby's dead. I'm like, what do you mean? She said, the baby's dead. I'm 16 years old. His mom, my son's mom, comes out behind me. She hears Mom screaming also. And I turn to her, slide my arms under hers, and I say to her, the baby's dead. I'm 16 years old. She's 15. She's falling to the ground. My mother's running back the other way.
Man.
Life showed up. Life showed up. And it got real busy for me after that. You think I didn't care. Screw God. Forget God. God took my son. And after that, that pistol started going off. I started robbing people in my neighborhood, in the group that I ran with, within my family. I carried 14 caskets in 3 years. Family members and friends who had either have fallen off to the use of drugs, overdosed, had either been killed and doing bad drug deals and armed robberies, or committed suicide because they were tired of using, couldn't stop, or got caught up in some situations with the police and didn't want to go to prison, and they killed themselves instead of going to prison. In 3 years, I carried 14 caskets.
Wow. Grace and peace, brother. That's deep. That's heavy. That's heavy.
Yeah.
And I know that could possibly have
perpetuated
or exacerbated using for you.
We didn't get help. We didn't get help. We got high.
Okay.
We didn't go to counselors, therapists. We went to the liquor store, to the dope house, and back to the block.
Like you say, you didn't get help. You
We
got
got high.
high. I like that.
Yeah, we didn't get help.
And
we got
not in
high.
the terms of in a way of
It's
satisfying,
an
but it's
explanation.
an explanation.
Yeah.
It's a succinct explanation,
Yeah.
very powerful
we
but
got
brief. Nicole Harris said she agrees so many addictions feel like void and unfortunately are rooted in unintended consequences stemming from dysfunctional behavior. Not a judgment, but people coping with life the best or only way they know how.
Or they've been taught how. My dad, it was a training. My uncles were, a couple of them were pimps. And so what they did was they showed us to find women with low self-esteem and spend time with them. The larger the woman, the lower the self-esteem. Hold her hand, be seen in public with her, she'd give you anything you want. And the example he used was he had a lady that would go to the store and cash her husband's check every week, every Friday. He would wait in the parking lot. When she went in the store to cash the check, he would go in the store behind them. She would cash the man's check, buy the man his liquor, take money out of the envelope, place it on the shelf in the back of the store for my uncle to get. And then when they'd leave, she'd get her husband drunk, put him to bed, and then come and sleep with my uncle.
All right.
It's a training.
Yeah,
It's a training.
it is, because I'm thinking,
taught
man, I
us.
see a man following me in the back of the store. Two things gonna happen.
Well,
It's
see,
gonna be
she-
two holes, one in my pocket and one in him.
But she's-
Follow me in the damn store.
It was a pre-designated drop point. It was a pre-designated drop point. And this woman's husband never knew that his wife was giving this man worked when the plants were doing 12 hours, 6 days a week and 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. And he was a skilled tradesman. She's cashing his check, buying his liquor, and putting the most of his check in her pocket, the rest to my uncle. He never even seen his money.
Yeah.
And she'd get him drunk just to pass him out so she could go sleep with my uncle. And they taught us
Wow.
to manipulate and deceive. And that's, like I said, I was 14 at that time.
Wow. I have someone on the line that Nicole is saying she is enjoying this very candid talk, and so am I.
You notice we have on black and white together?
I did
Yeah,
notice
we
that.
didn't even plan
we were
this,
just
did we?
vibing,
You
but
know,
okay,
here
now
we go.
kindred spirits. I
Yes,
got
ma'am.
you. Describe how your addiction started. So, in the natural progression, you moved from probably moving weed to cocaine.
With the drinking, then we went to THC, mescaline. Powdered cocaine was around. Most of us didn't want to be bothered with it. When Freebase came out, there were some of us that were selling cocaine in a large quantity and never had smoked the cocaine. Well, I'm area manager for Church's Fried Chicken in Pontiac. I'm selling powder out the drive-through window on the weekends. I've always had the business mind. I've always taken care of business. I've been in charge of every job I've ever had.
I wonder if somebody
Construction
doing that at Popeyes now.
You
That's
know,
why them damn lies
the-
don't go. They done mixed the cocaine in with the
With-
damn
with-
flour,
with
and
the
somebody
flour.
done ate it. Now they coming back like, I need another
did
chicken
need another
sandwich.
chicken sandwich. They didn't sprinkle cocaine. That's what my supplier actually asked me at the time. What are you selling, chicken cane or what? But it got to the point where a so-called friend was smoking cocaine and selling for me and decided he didn't want to stop smoking, called me over and had me smoke with him and two girls at a hotel. 3 days later, I wake up, hadn't been to work, hadn't left the hotel. Dealers have it. I'm going about an ounce a day, and I'm sharing and I'm trying to maintain a business and businesses, but not gotten to the point where I wasn't going to work, nor was I even selling the cocaine I had because I didn't want to run out. And I was in my basement with a Mac 10, 2 clips, an ounce of cocaine on the bar, and could nobody come down the stairs. I actually put my wife, well, my child's mother, out of the home because she came into the bathroom while I was smoking, told her, I don't need you anymore. I got what I need. You can leave. I put her out the house because I had my cocaine and that's all I needed. Did not want her anymore.
Man, if
That's
this is not a Netflix
the disease of
show
addiction.
in the making,
My disease of addiction got me to that point.
wow, we
Do it.
definitely
I no
got to
longer
get a
needed sex.
documentary done of you and get your story out because where you are now, see, people see our glory, they don't know our story until you tell it, and that's how I like for it to be. You see my glory, you don't know my story because it's my story. I want to tell it. Let people hear it from me. But to look at you right now, I would never know that you've been through any of that. But guess what, listeners? There's more.
God is good.
But God is good.
I've been shot 9 times. 3 times the first time, 6 times the second time. The second time I got shot, after a guy thought he was about to be robbed again. I robbed 100 people one summer, collecting money that was owed to me or just ran out of money to get high with and decided to take some. And so he saw me standing at the window, outside the window, and he went to the other side of it, shot through the wall. 6 bullets hit my left shoulder. I'm walking down the driveway, reaching into my shirt, and there's no blood. Buddy that's with me is like, are you hit? I'm like, yeah, but I'm not bleeding. Man, I'm so angry now. I come back with what I need to take care of this guy. We find out he did it by mistake. So he says, I go in the house. The guy whose house it was gives me a bunch of dope to go in and just go to rest and smoke and go to sleep. While this guy goes back to selling drugs, waiting in the living room. I'm waiting for him in the living room to finish what he has so I can go rob him. And I'm going to kill this guy because he had just shot me 6 times. And his girlfriend asked him, do you know who you just shot? And my name and the family reputation was like, that's not what you do. That's not who you do that to. And he got out of there, and I was saved from a life sentence because I was going to kill that man. That's what we were taught to do, I mean, it was no holds barred. You could do anything that you felt you could get away with.
I understand.
So,
I understand.
my disease was, I had multiple diseases. I was afflicted with multiple power. Issues of entitlement, multiple personalities. I had become desensitized. My question was, who's going to be left to bury me? So I figured, let me get up out of here as soon as I can. So either I was homicidal and suicidal. State psychiatrist diagnosed me as emotionally disturbed with homicidal and suicidal tendencies. because I either wanted you to kill me or I wanted to kill me, but somehow or another I wanted to leave here. God did not want that to happen. He kept me through all of that. Never been to prison. Handcuffed, arrested, booked 77 times. Jaw broke twice, stabbed twice. Hammer, pistol, boot, brick.
Wow.
I'm 61 years old now.
Well, let's go up to the part, because I know a little bit of your story, and I know that I know how you quit, but I want my listeners to know. So you booked 71 times, never went to prison. 77 times, never went to prison. But let my listeners know what happened on that last time you got in front of that judge.
I had been using, and a family member had been using me. He had gotten my name. He had leased a van out of the Las Vegas airport with a California driver's license with his picture, my name. He had a prepaid credit card that he used that they had put money in the bank on with my name. They moved $700,000 from Washington State to New Orleans to Miami, purchasing and transferring, money, drug money. He hasn't paid the lease bill on that van. I'm driving it back and forth to Tucson and Las Vegas 3 times a month. I get pulled over here. The van's reported stolen. I'm taken to jail. They tried to take the van back to Las Vegas, tried to drive it back. It kept running out of gas. They ship it back, find a dummy gas tank. My last 4 charges were conspiracy to interstate transport narcotics over 9 state lines, interstate transportation of stolen property over 9 state lines, credit card fraud, and criminal racketeering. Now, if these are conspiracy charges and I'm caught in this van by myself, there's no one with me and I'm not telling them anything. So they could not go any further with the charges, because when the officer said to me, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
Then I'm not saying nothing.
Well, then if I'm by myself, if I don't tell, ain't nobody to tell.
Exactly.
And I didn't tell. And the judge himself, he was a recovering addict. He was a recovering alcoholic. He could see where they had used me, and I was considered a mule. I was being used. My identity was being used because nothing in my past behavior had been of that level of criminal behavior. And he said, Mr. Hill, he asked me first, he said, Mr. Hill, do you know you've been booked 77 times? And there was a lady in the gallery, and she said, damn. And I'm like, I'm gone. And then he says, but I'm going to do that favor you asking me. I didn't know what he was talking about, but during the pre-sentence evaluation, I asked for drug treatment again. He said, I'm going to give you drug treatment for the 10th time. He said, but I promise you this much. If you ever come back in front of my courtroom again, you will go to the penitentiary. Then he said, 6 months in the county jail. Now, mind you, I'm facing 22 and a half to 30 years in prison, 175 months federal time, which is 15 years, 7.5 to 15 state time. There's what they call truth of sentence. In the federal courts, you have to do their time completely first before you can go into the state time. I'm still into the 7 years that I would be doing in the state time. I still would not be free if that judge had not given me the consideration he did. Well, when he hit the gavel, I took a deep breath and I just turned and took off running to the door and started pulling on the handle. The court officer pulls his gun. What are you doing? I said, I'm going back there, Your Honor. It's over. It's over. You'll never see me again. You'll never see me again. You can give me a key. This is exactly what I said to the judge. You can give me a key. I'll lock myself up. You will never see me again. It's been almost 20 years now since I've had handcuffs on me.
Thank God.
It's been almost 20 years.
Hey,
You talking
if
about
that
recovery.
wasn't the act of God, he came
Yeah.
down from the heavens and was
Yeah.
like, hey.
You know,
So Nicole Harris said, all those drugs, and by the grace of God, your memory was saved, and now your testimony is saving someone who will hear your story.
yes.
Yes.
My life story is a training video.
Yes, and it's going to
Yeah.
be a documentary.
It's
I'm
gonna-
not
yeah,
playing
a
with you.
movie
We
as a
need
whole.
to get this in a documentary format. This is Netflix stuff.
This is what we're doing today.
Yep, this is
Setting the
Netflix stuff.
foundation.
So we're going to. So your treatment stayed the course, and you ended up getting into recovery. And what's the hardest part about recovery?
Dealing with the people that lie to you about what they're going to do. See, because I don't have ignorance as an excuse. So for me, and I figured the crooks and a lot of the behavior, the lying and the cheating and conniving, I was going to be through with all that when I came out of the streets. When I got into recovery services, and then listening to individuals that said they had my best interests at heart, not come through with what they said they were going to do, I had to focus on my own foundation.
I got you.
I had to build a plan for I didn't have a retirement plan in the street. I didn't have a pension, had none of that. So I had to reinvent myself. They say I do that on a regular basis. I reinvent myself. I'm considered what they call a social chameleon. I say I get in where I fit in. So I can be sitting here with you, and then in a few days we'll be talking to a man at the White House, and I'll call former President Barack Obama, talk to him about something, ask Miss Obama about some stuff I want her to help us do with the girls. I don't have a problem with that.
I got that. So, addiction is the only prison where the lock is on the inside.
Yes.
So when you said you was going to run and lock yourself up, that was, they were locking you up.
Physically.
But you were unlocking your freedom and your healing.
Because
you recognize that as a chance, as an opportunity.
I started my first program in the county jail, the Missing Dads program.
And we're going to get to that, but that's
the power of dads. But when I went into that jail, there were 19 young men I found that were in that jail, in that unit that I was in, that either got high with their fathers, sold drugs with their fathers, or didn't know who their fathers were. And they allowed me to start my own group while in the jail as an inmate. In the treatment program, I had my own group going. I started my own group, started my own business plan right there in the jail. I had to have something to do. I knew I couldn't go back to where I came from.
Well, let me tell you, Zura, hi, that's my daughter. She said such a beautiful testimony. Hi, Lisa Dixon. You are a tested and proven individual who has survived a crucible, taken control of your life, and grown into a stronger person. For this reason, I wrote one of the nominations for you to get the award that you received. I remember you contacting me and asking me, letting me know that your daughter had nominated you. I wrote that for you to get that award for SAMHSA with no reservation. I didn't have to think about it or anything like that. And you know me, I'm not going to just put my name on anything or whatever, but I didn't have to think twice about it. So we're going to go to the award that you received from SAMHSA. So we're going to watch the clip.
Okay.
Wow. This award means that I have done what I promised my God. I promised him if he woke me up, I'd get up each day and help someone help themselves. So early in my recovery, I began to I started volunteering every place that would have me, day and night, in churches, at schools, mentoring programs, recreation centers. I found out then about alcohol, tobacco, and other drug prevention programs. And I got my license as a prevention provider for the state of Michigan. That's when I realized what I was saved for. Oh, boy, man. I was no longer part of the problem. I became part of the solution. So I set this goal to become a man God would use, and that I've done. I live by my favorite quote, and that is my personal quote, that my success is mandatory, not optional, and my responsibility. I want to take this time to thank my family. My mother, she's 80 years old now, and she still calls me at 11 o'clock to see if I'm at home. My daughter, Denisha, who wrote the nomination for me, we work together as a family in recovery. I speak as the addicted parent. She speaks as a child of the addicted parent. My grandchildren, my wife was here with me. Actually will be married on the 29th of this month, 1 year. So, yeah, I love you too, sweetie. She's actually my parenting coach because she has, taught me how to actually be there and listen to my children. And so also I would like to thank the individuals throughout the Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority who helped guide me to this point. They were there for me when I did not understand all the changes necessary to be successful. They taught me new ways to live without drugs and alcohol. They acted as my family, and for that, I'd like to thank them all, and I'd like to thank you all.
Powerful.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
Powerful.
I did not know how to live without using. I had to be taught. At 42 years old, I began to learn again how to live without using drugs and alcohol to numb my feelings.
What is the best part about being sober?
The money I get to spend on other stuff.
Okay, next
I like
question.
taking trips. I like going places. I get in the car and take off in a minute.
Okay.
Call, get a ride.
Hey, you didn't even have to think
They
hard
think
about that.
Yeah.
Addiction doesn't kill the addict. It kills the family and those that love them also.
Sure. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Because if people love you and they care about you, then if they see you doing something that could potentially harm yourself, to me, I call it a form of suicide because you know it can lead to death,
Sure.
but you don't stop it, right? Describe sobriety in 3 words.
God is first. God is first. For me, that's the only way I stay sober. God first. That promise I made God when I got that, when he gave me that reprieve, I promised him if he woke me up, I'd get up and help someone help themselves every day. And that's what I do. For not a dime. I change tires, fix flats, anything I see. I could be on the road. It happened last Sunday. On the road, young man sitting there that had been there since 4:30 in the morning with his girlfriend. Didn't have a jack. We're waiting for a ride to go do some work on some property. Seen him, walked and asked him what he needed, walked back to my house, got the jacks and tools we needed, came back, changed his tire, and then sent him on his way. I'm free. See, I'm supposed to be locked up. I'm not supposed to be here.
Right.
See, so for me, that was what I promised God I'd do. I have to, so, yeah, sobriety to me, it's God always first.
I love that.
Has to be.
Question for you. Okay, so you know what I do, but I'll say it over the air for the listeners because they may not know that I have a substance use prevention agency that I've had for 20 years and have now moved to overdose prevention and, some portions of recovery. In that, I train, I'm a national trainer for the CCAR, Connecticut Center for Addiction and Recovery, peer recovery coach program. And so I get a lot of questions because now with the opioid overdose crisis that they are placing a lot of recovery coaches in a lot of places, and the emergency room is one of them. And so when I do the trainings, a lot of people ask me questions which really can only be answered by the HR department or the person that's hiring them, but still I'm always asked this question, and that question is, can someone who is not addicted, never been to rehab, have never suffered through the dark hours of being weaned off a substance, have never been physically and emotionally dependent on that substance, be an effective recovery coach?
Yes.
You said
yes,
yes.
they can. Yes, they
Okay,
can.
and why is that?
If they've experienced it through a loved one,
Okay.
a family member, a friend. We don't start out wanting to be as dysfunctional as we become. We don't want to be as sick as we are. It's like having diabetes or being on dialysis. They don't ask for that. It's a disease, and the disease of addiction is just that. For myself, it has to be accepted as just that. But it can, however, be arrested at some point, and recovery is impossible. Diabetics take insulin. They monitor their sugar. They take insulin at different levels to maintain a certain level. Same thing with me. I can't use anything. Nothing. I don't even need to drink sparkling water because psychologically, I'm telling myself I'm going to get a buzz. And once I start wanting to get a buzz, then I want to continue. Relapse happens before the actual use anyway. We started a meeting at the Mathis Community Center. I am Peer Recovery Support Program Director for Judge Greg Mathis. And we started a Narcotics Anonymous meeting called The Thought is the Cause of It All. Our thinking is what causes us to use.
Absolutely.
The thought is the cause of it all.
Absolutely. I agree with
Unhealthy
that
thinking.
100%.
Unhealthy thinking.
Unhealthy thinking, and not just using substances, but, anything.
Sure.
Stinking thinking.
Yeah,
that thought.
that was a thought.
So like you said, that is 100. That's real talk. And speaking of the authority, we have Kara. Hi, Kara. Kara Thomas.
Hey,
She's
Kara.
watching the show, so she's logged in.
We know each other well. How are you?
Yes.
Hope all is good.
So, as you say, the relapse occurs before the actual use because of the thought. And I also call that certain triggers too, right? Certain things that you're exposed to, dreams. Did you ever dream about being high?
I've watched myself pull the pipe while on my bed sleep. I watched myself smoking while laying next to my wife in the bed, jumped up and said, "What the hell's going on?" I saw me smoking while laying there with years in recovery. The memories, our thoughts, the behaviors, all of the memories, they're still there. One of the things I do and why I do so much in the community and giving back is so I can create new thinking, healthier thoughts. So when I take off, we went to Niagara Falls. There are things my wife hasn't experienced, foods she would like to try. So every year for anniversary, I take her to another place. They have a signature food. So we went to Chicago one year for pizza. We drove past all the pizza places in Michigan to take her to Chicago to get deep dish pizza. We went to Philadelphia for Philly cheesecake. We went to Niagara Falls because she had never seen the falls. We're going to Texas for a T-bone steak. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I do with my money now. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, because when I asked you what else could you be doing, you said, hey, the money you were spending. Because, what I have noticed about you, you got that same hustle.
Oh,
Same hustle, different product.
Well,
so
I'm still a baller.
So you still a
I'm
baller.
a
You
baller.
just not moving eight
I
balls.
sell hope, not dope. I'm the
Okay.
hope man, not the dope man now.
You sell hope.
I sell hope, not
Not
dope.
dope.
I sell hope by the group, by the session. It's hope. And then I even give hope away. I gave dope away. I give hope away too. You know what I'm saying? I don't get paid. Most of the stuff I do, I don't want to get paid. I'm being paid by not using. I blew $1.7 million on freebase cocaine in 23 years. A 10-unit apartment building, 4-family flat, 3 houses, 6 vehicles. Me and my dad owned our own construction company. I was the area manager for Church's Fried Chicken in charge of 5 restaurants. Smoked it up. My clothes, my jewelry, my cars, wanted nothing but to stay high.
Damn. Not because of that, because I've been high, I've drank, I've
But
done,
no,
but
I
that
systematically.
you counted it up,
Well, I had to do
and
my-
that you realized
I had to do my
1.7
4-step
million.
inventory. We do a 4-step inventory in Narcotics Anonymous. I added it up and started crying. They asked me what's wrong, and I pointed at the bottom line, and they said this. They said, what is that? I said, that's unacceptable. I'm not going out like that.
Whoa.
No.
So
no.
you want back everything you lost, and I hope we get it on Wednesday.
My child support was $342,000
Now, I
when
remember
I
that.
came to recovery. When I came to recovery, and I went in front of the judge, and I thanked the friend of the court for them feeding my children when I wouldn't, not when I couldn't. I chose to buy drugs and alcohol with my money on it, But I promise you, if you leave me free, you will get your money. My child support is less than $70,000 now. And no once awards for my arrest. Haven't been handcuffed in 20 years, almost 20 years. I promise this. I thank the friend. He told Mr. Hill, I've never heard anybody come in this court and thank the friend of the court for anything.
That's deep, though.
But
you
they
said
chose.
You fed my kids, and you took care of my kids.
When I chose not to.
When I wouldn't, not because
when
I couldn't.
Because I would. When I wouldn't. Not when because I couldn't. Because I wouldn't. I chose to buy drugs and alcohol with my money. And I thank you for what you've done. Now I want you to get your money back, and you will get it, sir. I promise you that. He had my portfolio in front of him. He said, Mr. Hill, I believe you. I believe you. I had already had my first contract with Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority. And I had it in writing, and I had it all in front of me, my portfolio.
That's deep. Well, although I can keep going, but I'm going to take this break because our next segment, we're going to go into America's greatest scapegoat, the Black father. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But to set the mood for us and to put us into that perspective, we're going to listen to and watch, those of you that are watching, a video called As a Black Man by my cousin Millard Thomas Jr. of Run of the Mill Records. Let's get into that and we will be back.
I'm just trying to do the best that I can as a strong black man. Yeah. Here I stand as a strong black man, having done all I can to please my fellow man. I don't understand why that knife is in your hand. After doing all I can as a strong black man, I'm gonna take my stand as a black man. I will do the best that I can as a black man. I stand on my own as a black man. I'm gonna sing my song. Oh, this is me. So hear my plea. I'm a young black man, down on my knees. I say this world is wrong, and we don't have too long. I'm gonna take this stand as a strong black man. I feel the rain falling down on me. If you could see what's on my mind, oh, you will see. Everyone would be more kind. Everyone would be happy. I'm gonna keep on my goal. I won't let it go. As a black man, gonna take my stand. As a black man, I'ma do the best that I can. Oh, as a black man, I stand on my own. As a black man, I'm gonna sing my song.
Okay, so you've been listening to As a Black Man by my cousin Millard Thomas Jr., Run of the Mill Records. I love that song. He has an album out called What's Your Request? And you can download that off of iTunes. So we're going to get back into the segment now. I wanted to talk about as a black man because let me read this segment. I wrote this down. It's no coincidence that the black father has been the scapegoat of society since the U.S. Secretary of Labor Daniel Patrick Moynihan assembled the Moynihan Report in 1965. Moynihan, a white male, strategically wanted to explain why the black community was not being as successful as white society after the civil rights era. Thus, he branded the lack of black fathers in the home as the root cause of black strife. He also claimed that the black communities allowed children to grow up in broken families without a father. The community is asking for and will continuously receive chaos under those circumstances. That being said, two major ways of scapegoating the mistreatment of our black men and the murder of our black youth and men have been used to set black families back. I say this, that's bullshit, because they started moving the black man out of the home in slavery.
Sure.
So I understand what Moynihan put in his report in 1965 representing the United States government, but the scapegoat, because it was by design. And every time I look at the movie Claudine, or, you know, even some of the Tyler Perry, the old stuff, you know, I became saddened of that depiction of who we are as a people. Sure. You remember in Claudine, they had to hide the iron. Like, oh, the social worker come and hide the iron. But even outside of Hollywood, in order for black families to receive anything, well, anyone, but I'll say the spotlight is on the black family and the black father in this case, the man could not be in the home to receive food stamps, to receive whatever it is, and it's still to this day. So what Moynihan was saying is adequate as far as the government's perspective. But to me, they're using it as a scapegoat.
Sure, justification for systematic failure. The systemic design is not designed for our continued success. So you look at the Tulsa, Oklahoma, when they bombed up, you know, they were throwing fire bombs and whatnot out of heliplanes and helicopters on the black. They had their own Wall Street. They had their own bank in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You're talking about, you know, domestic terrorism. Black Wall Street. Yeah. Domestic terrorism. As a people, I mean, we can't continue to use their methods against ourselves. So, like with you, we were talking earlier, I just defined some words. A coward, not someone that's not there to face danger or adversity. Accountability, responsibility. Those things that we have to accept for ourselves as a priority. When I thanked the friend of the court, I realized that because what my dad had done, I said I didn't want to do to my children, but I had done it due to my drug and alcohol use. Now I need to go home. I started my second book. I Was a Missing Dad, Missing No More. Like I mentioned, my daughters, we speak as a family. I speak as the addicted parent. They speak as a child of the addicted parent. And we're working on a movement now. We're together.
Yes.
Working on a movement now called The Power of Dads.
Yes.
And the Power of Dads.
You know, I want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of that initiative.
You know, you said something a minute ago on how you had no problem with writing that nomination for me, and you mentioned to me, you thanked me. I had no problem with making the call and adding you to that call to the White House. Because at 11 o'clock on this Wednesday, we will get a call from the White House Office of Drug Control Policy, from the director, asking us what it is he can do for us here to help us make a difference with our dad's program, with the Power of Dads program. And so that's our goal, is that we grow forward. We host in our school, in the church, at the Mathis Community Center, ways to empower us as men, even women, because what has happened is women have had to take the role of a man, so they need all the support a man's going to get too.
Absolutely.
And our programs for boys and girls. We're going to have a meet and greet at the Mathis Community Center on the 28th of February, so we can launch in March. So these things we'll work on together.
That's a wonderful thing. 3 words that I think of that come to mind when I think of the missing dad.
Yeah.
Is
Sad.
important, undervalued, and need to be loved the right way. Because I feel like they're loved and people love them, but they're not loving them the way that they need it.
I mentioned to you a minute ago about feelings. When I was at Share House treatment program, there was a counselor there, Linda T. Ford. She's passed on, but a wonderful person, recovering heroin addict, prostitute. She was the counselor that taught us how to be men. But our feelings, she helped us be able to identify what we were actually feeling that we did not want to feel. So we had the 6 feelings: mad, glad, sad, hurt, afraid, and ashamed. How many men you gonna get to tell you that they're afraid, they're ashamed, they sad, they hurt? Those are natural feelings, but we mask them with aggression, violence, drugs, alcohol, sex. We don't want to feel those things, and they're natural feelings. I was told you better not cry. You cry, we are not supposed to cry. So why God give us tear ducts? We don't know how to feel and give love, so then you can't love us because we don't know how to love ourselves. We don't even know what love feels like, a lot of us.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, a lot of people will refer to the missing dad as deadbeat, as trifling, as all of these other things. In my mind, I often think, because I'm very selective, even the person I'm going to sleep with and be in a relationship with. So it's like, was he that before? And what made you think a baby was going to make him anything different after? And I think about that. And I've said that to a few women about people in my family who they're like, well, he's this and he's that, you know, in a derogatory way. But it's like, you know, and I can even say my own brother. I've been knowing him all his life. He's been consistent the way he is. So whatever you don't like, you had an audition. You could have walked away, but you chose to get pregnant by this person. And now you want to complain about how he is. He's been consistently the same. You should have made better choices.
One of the things with, like myself, for 17 years in active addiction, married to one of my kids, my daughter's mom's, one of my marriages, there was a lot of verbal and emotional abuse. And a lot of times we don't see men as being abused. But I was very verbally and emotionally abused. She would say things intentionally that would hurt my feelings, make me sad. And that is real. I cried. I was in the jail. One of my therapists, actually Mr. Woodward, he said he was being verbally and emotionally abused at home. When he explained it, I stood up in front of 60 men and started crying and said, that's what's been happening to me. I didn't even know that existed. I didn't know verbal abuse was as devastating as physical abuse. When you call me a crackhead, tell me I ain't this or that, over a period of time, I'm going to believe you, and I'm going to act out that way. Mm-hmm. Well, you telling a man you ain't this or you ain't that verbal abuse, saying the things that we say, they stick. Mm-hmm. Remember they say sticks and stones may break my bones, but words do hurt. That's a lie. Yeah, words are stick. You hit me with a stick, the bruise will go away. You tell me I'm a crackhead and I ain't ever going to be no good, I believed you. I thought I'd die using.
Well, you know what? That time really went by, and our time is up. I want to say this to close out that segment. Too often, Black issues are linked to correlation instead of causation. So inevitably, we have let a myth fuel how we contextualize Black abuse instead of trying to figure out the real reasons why our men were subjects of abuse. Lacking a father is not the reason white supremacy and police brutality endangered these men. But it was easier to make the black father the issue and not the systems and institutions that toy with black life constantly. It is actually quite funny how people believe a black father being in or out of the picture would stop a bullet from taking a child from this earth too soon, stopping a wrongful conviction, mass incarceration, or the prison industrial complex. It won't.
It won't.
So I'm going to say right now as we close, ballot or bullet. Because see, who we vote for, how we vote, what we vote for, cast the right ballot, or it's like taking a bullet. Sheldon, I thank you so much for coming on the show today, being so transparent, because Nicole Harris has been with us and everyone else on the Facebook Live. Thank you. But thank you for your honesty, your transparency, and sharing your experience. You helped somebody through your healing and through your story. Is it anything that you want to say to the audience and my listeners as we leave?
I'd like to say join us. We and Valerie are working together on a movement. We'll need all of your support. My website is citywidementoring.com, one word, Citywide Mentoring. And with that, contact us. We are working together. She is actually my business manager now. She accepted the role. She said she didn't know she could keep up. We're going to find out.
Well, you know, I, like you, want to share what I know and the obstacles and hurdles that I've jumped. Why have somebody else do that? See, I can pass the baton back. This is like a race together. We can win. Yeah. And so if I can give you any words of encouragement, knowledge, wisdom, or whatever to help this come to fruition, that's what I'm going to do. So you've been listening to Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, where I don't try to spill the tea or make you feel dazed like you had a shot of cheap liquor. I just want you to see things from a different perspective, mine. And we're going to leave you today with another track from my cousin Millard Thomas Jr. called Someday Will Come. Because see, what we have put into place, we know that someday it will come. Keep the faith, and we're out of here. We hope you tune in next week. Have a great week. So long.
Thank you.
Mom, Dad, maybe what I was thinking.
Thinking what?
Someday, will we have a better future?
Someday. Lately is more than a wise
De gente, andamos en guerra, uno con otro, y todavía tenemos mucho trabajo que hacer. Pero un día, sueño que juntamos unidos como uno.
Here I am trying to understand.